Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on who you are, where you are, and what you're doing. It's morning for me, and I'm going to show you how I use Helix for acoustic guitar. Now, everybody seems to think of Helix as a processor for electric guitar, and it does, I admit it feels like that's its main design. But ever since I got my hands on this Helix rack, and of course Helix Stomp as well, I have managed to get better acoustic sounds, both live and even recording, believe it or not, than I ever thought possible. It's a great, great tool for acoustic guitar. I sell presets through Marketplace. What I'm showing you right now is pretty much all my secrets. So have at it. You are welcome to continue to buy my presets if you want to, but I'm showing you what you need here. First of all, I always turn the input gate on. Other people don't like it, but on acoustic guitar it's kind of a no-brainer. The other thing that I always like to do is I always like to set my input block to exactly the input I'm using. I never use the multi, simply because I want to make sure I don't have any extraneous noise if possible. Next thing I do, first block, every single time that I make an acoustic guitar chain is always an IR. So I'm going to go to impulse response, mono, because you don't have a choice. I'm actually going to select the 2048 sample. You will hear the difference recording. You won't generally hear the difference live. You can use the 1024 if you're playing live in a band mix, but for solo guitar I like to use the 2048 if I'm using only a single impulse response. Sometimes I use stereo ones, but that's not what we're doing today. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select my IR. Now there are some out there that are free that I actually created that you can have. And I'm actually using those ones today for this patch. We're going to do a big body acoustic guitar, which is at 102. First thing you need to know on these particular ones, you need to go to about, I go to about -5. Sometimes a little higher, sometimes a little lower on that. Most IRs need to be at -18, that's the default. But a lot of them, including the excellent ones from 3 Sigma, need to be at a much higher level, -6 or even higher than that. I do my low cuts here. I want to get rid of the extra boom at the bottom. I want to hear the bass on the guitar, you know, the bass end, the low end, but I don't want it to be overwhelming. I leave high cut alone. That's my impulse response block. Next thing we do, almost always when I can, and those of you who are using HX effects cannot do this, but the rest of us can, there is a preamp in here that is the secret sauce. It is the mic preamp, studio tube preamp. Turn the gain to 4. You can go a little lower than 4, I go to low. Leave the low and high cut alone here, set the sensitivity to line, and put the level all the way up. Fun fact here, I am very likely to take this level and control it with my expression pedal for volume so that I can save a block. This patch I'm about to make would work on either a full Helix or on a Stomp. So let's go ahead and do that. As you may or may not know, you can go to Controller Assign. In this particular case, I'm going to change it to the level to be activated by EXP2. And I'm just going to leave it at 0 and 10 because that's exactly what I want it to be. I'm going to hit the Home button, go back to Main. And the next block is very important. It is the Parametric EQ. Even though the IR is going to just about replace the sound of your guitar with a mic'd acoustic guitar, you still might find that you actually want to add some EQ. I certainly do. And very simply, every single time, it's the same one. And to be honest with you, it's almost always the same general settings. And I'm going to show them to you now. I generally go to about 180 on the low end, and I cut it by about 2 decibels. I do want to tell you how I did that, how I found that frequency, and I'll show you how I found that frequency with the mid frequency. With the guitar plugged in, turn the gain all the way up. And then as you're playing, cycle through these frequencies until you find something that really hurts your ears. Then when you find that frequency, and by the way, on the mid frequency on acoustic guitar, for me, it is always 2.7K. Then instead of boosting it, you cut it. In this case by about, I'm going to say by about 2 dB. Finally, let's go to the next page. I'm going to go to my high frequency. 8 kilohertz is actually where I like to kind of hang out. I sometimes go a little bit higher to 10. And here what I'm going to do is, this is the only place where I change the high Q. I usually, often, reduce it a bit. Let's say to about 0.4. And I boost it by about, let's say about 4 decibels. This is to give a little bit of air on top of the sound. A little bit of zing, if you will. And I think that works really well. The low end at 180 hertz, and again, you want to find the frequency for your guitar and your ears, gets rid of the boom thump that can get in the way, especially of other instruments. And quite frankly, it's a frequency that I generally end up cutting if I record with a mic. The 2.7K gets rid of the quack, and boosting at about 8 to 10 kilohertz, just a bit, adds a little tiny bit of zing, as I like to say. It gives you a little bit of sheen that I think sounds really nice for acoustic guitar. Next is the easiest block to add, and that is the LA Studio Comp, one of the most wonderful things you find in here. You could take both of those blocks, delete them, and replace them with the multi-band compressor, and you can use that as kind of a comp and an EQ. That works really well if you need to save a block on stomp, but I'm not going to go into that today. So right here, believe it or not, I don't touch this. I leave the settings exactly where they are. I do believe that this order is important. This is basically the sound of the mic'd guitar going into a mic preamp, and if you EQ after compression, I don't think you get as good a result as if you EQ before compression. Finally, at this point, you might want to add some effects. Here's one that is one of my favorites to sort of sit in the mix in a really cool way, and that is in stereo modulation. Find the Trinity Chorus. It's really important that you take the rate down to 0, take the left depth way down to about 4, right depth maybe to about 4. Again, use your ears for this. And then center depth, I might even go lower than that. It's going to be very subtle. The mix right now is at 50%. Sometimes I lower that just a little bit, and I assign a foot switch so I can turn this on or off. Sounds a little bit like a 12-string guitar, only with all the same strings instead of high strings. Wonderful, wonderful little sound. Finally, you can add your time effects, your reverbs, your delays, whatever it is that you want to add. In this case, I'm just going to add a reverb. I always add stereo reverbs. They can either sum to mono, or you can use them in stereo when you have the wonderful opportunity where it sounds good in the room. I like the Ganymede a lot. Again, I'm not going to actually use this reverb to fill out the sound in a room. The room has reverb. I use this as an effect. Now, you've really, really got to experiment with yourself, with your own ears, with your own guitar, with what you want to do. I set the mix at 25% or lower. I very often turn the modulation down. I might turn the tone pretty far down, and then I always turn trails on every single time-based effect I use. Back out to the main screen. That preset has 5 blocks. That's a wonderful acoustic guitar preamp that you could use this on stomp. Quite frankly, you could use this on HX effects, because the mic preamp right here, that's a very subtle effect you could probably live without. Go try this yourself and let me know how it goes. Thank you.